What if I told you that for centuries, a small group of Swiss speculators have been passing down a secret set of rules for getting rich? And these rules, well, they fly in the face of pretty much every piece of financial advice you've ever heard. They're called the Zurich Axioms, and let me tell you, they are not for the faint of heart. But before we dive into the rules, let's just think about the puzzle of Switzerland itself for a second. I mean, here you have this tiny, rocky, landlocked country. It has almost zero natural resources. No oil, no coal, not a lot of great farmland. So how in the world did the Swiss become some of the richest people on the entire planet?
Well, the secret is that they just don't see the world the way we do. You see, the Swiss didn't become the world's bankers by playing it safe. Not at all. They got there by mastering the art of the calculated bet. To put it simply, they are the world's cleverest gamblers.
Okay, so that brings us to the very first core principle. And this one is a big one. It's all about completely redefining your relationship with risk. See, the whole Zurich philosophy, it starts by just throwing out the idea that safety should be your main goal. In fact, it argues the complete opposite.
So, let's look at the two fundamental paths you can take in life. On one hand, you can be, let's call her sober Sylvia. She puts all her money into super safe things like bank accounts. Now, Sylvia will probably never be poor, but she is definitely never going to be rich. On the other hand, you've got Mad Mary. Mary takes calculated risks, in stocks, gold, new ventures. Sure, she's going to have some sleepless nights, but she has a real shot at actual wealth. The result? Mary gets rich. And Sylvia? She'll be spending her golden years worrying about the heating bill.
You know, the legendary speculator Jesse Livermore summed up this entire mindset perfectly. He said, if I've got a choice between worried and poor, I'll take worried anytime. And that's the key, right? Worry isn't the problem. It's just the price you pay to get into the game of getting rich. The Swiss totally get this. For them, a life without adventure, well, it's barely a life at all.
So, this all boils down to the very first Zurich axiom, and it completely flips our idea of security on its head. It says, worry is not a sickness, but a sign of health. If you are not worried, you are not risking enough. Think about that. That little knot of worry in your stomach, it's not a sign you're doing something wrong. No, it's a sign you're alive. It means you're actually in the game, and you're risking enough to make a real difference.
Okay, so that leads us right into the second major principle. Because once you've decided to embrace risk, you have to face your single biggest opponent. And it's not the market, it's not the economy, it's you. More specifically, it's your own emotions.
Yeah, the axioms are absolutely crystal clear on this point. The one thing that separates the amateurs from the pros? It's greed. It's that little voice inside of your head whispering just a little more, right before you lose every single thing you've gained. Amateurs get greedy, they stay in too long, and they lose. The pros, they know exactly when to walk away.
So, how do you actually beat greed? Well, you use a system, a simple one. The axioms say you should always take your profit too soon. Here's how it works. First, before you even get into a deal, you decide your exact profit goal. You set a finish line right at the start. Second, the moment you hit that target, you get out. You sell. Don't hesitate. Don't try to squeeze out one last dollar. And third, and this is important, you reward yourself. Take some of that cash and go celebrate. This actually helps train your brain to enjoy the feeling of a successful closed deal.
All right, but what about the flip side? What happens when a bet goes wrong? Well, this is where hope becomes every bit as dangerous as greed. The Swiss approach here is just ruthless. It's totally unsentimental. When the ship starts to sink, you don't stand there and pray for a miracle. You jump.
Of course, knowing you should jump and actually doing it, well, they're two very different things, aren't they? So why is it so hard? It's because of these three big mental traps. First, there's the fear of regret, that voice saying, ugh, what if it bounces back right after I sell? Then there's just the unwillingness to abandon ship. It's hard to accept you've lost that money. And finally, there's the pure difficulty of admitting you were wrong. It's an ego thing. A successful speculator just learns to shut those voices down and cut their losses. Quickly, decisively, no looking back.
All right, so let's say you've redefined how you see risk, and you're starting to get a handle on your emotions. There's one final piece to the Zurich puzzle, and this one is all intellectual. It requires you to abandon one of the most deeply held beliefs we have as humans, the idea that the future can be predicted.
I mean, the axioms are pretty blunt about this. Listening to forecasts is a fool's game. Just look at history. It is absolutely littered with so-called experts who got it spectacularly, hilariously wrong. Every one of them claimed they saw a pattern, that they had a secret formula, that they could see the future, and every single one of them got completely humbled by reality.
And this brings us to what might be one of the most profound axioms of all. It says, chaos is not dangerous until it begins to look orderly. What does that mean? It means the world of money isn't some neat, orderly machine. It's just chaos. It's random. The exact moment you think you found a system or a pattern or a sure thing, that is the moment you are in the most danger. Because that illusion of order, it's a trap.
So when you boil it all down, the Zurich speculator isn't trying to see the future. They're not making these rigid 5-year plans. Instead, they just stay light on their feet. They stay nimble, ready to react to whatever's happening right now, both the opportunities and the dangers. And you know what? That's the only plan you really need.
So when you put all these pieces together, what does this really contrarian philosophy ask of us? You know, it's about way more than just a set of rules for investing. It's really a whole new way of looking at the world. The Zurich mindset really is a commitment to a few really powerful connected ideas. It means you embrace calculated risk, not as something to run from, but as the only real path to wealth. But that only works if you can first master your own emotions, your greed, and your hope. And you can only do that if you accept the world for what it is, chaos. You have to have the humility to admit that nobody, not you, and definitely not the experts, has any clue what's coming next. You just have to stay mobile and react.
And all this leaves us with one final kind of provocative thought. The axioms seem to suggest that the biggest risk of all is taking no risk at all. That the guaranteed path to just an okay, average life is paved with safety and certainty. So the real question here isn't about the market, it's about you. What's that calculated risk, that meaningful bet on yourself that you've been too afraid to make?